Welcome back to the channel. It's a brand new year, but there was one comic book of note from last week, Action Comics 1050. The comic they charged like it was a milestone, but they certainly didn't treat it like it was a milestone. It didn't really feel important. And here to talk with me about that is Jim from Weird Science. How you doing, Jim?
Hey there, Wes. Doing great. And yeah, here we are. Big milestone. Anniversary. They throw a lot of catchphrases at you with this thing. But really, like you said, the price tag really shows what they seem to think this is.
Yeah, you would think it was going to be important. They kind of treated it like it was. They got out some publicity. But once you actually read this, there's not a lot to it. I don't even think this is a comic book story. There's no like beginning, middle, and end. There's no resolution to anything. This reads much more like a Zero issue to me, where they're establishing some new rules, some ground rules for the universe moving forward for Superman. And they probably should have just given this away, to be honest. That's kind of what it's worth.
Well, you say that, and while you were... This is a free comic book day type deal. This should be something that you're just throwing out there, giving people, and really what it is doing, it's almost like a laundry list of things that they have to make sure it works out before they go to the big thing. But this is supposed to be the big thing. This is supposed to be special. This is what they pushed as something that you read over the years. I don't think anybody's going to read this after they're done.
Now, so there's three things they want to accomplish, and we'll talk about those here real quick. And then there's one enormous issue with this comic book. We'll talk about that at the end. But obviously the first thing, the thing that they publicized everywhere, is they're reestablishing the secret identities of Clark and John Kent. Basically, they went to Marvel Comics and copied their homework regarding how they undid the Daredevil reveal, except it's Manchester Black this time. Lex Luthor uses Manchester Black to basically suppress the identity of John Kent Superman and Clark Kent Superman. And if anyone learns the identity of the Supermen themselves being Clark or John, they're going to have like a stroke now.
Yeah. And you're right. And I'm surprised. I mean, seriously, I'm surprised they didn't have him in a purple jumpsuit or so. It's so much on the money of what happened with Daredevil. But even in the DC realm, this is what they did at the end of Grayson to get Dick Grayson's deal. They had the Somnus satellite. This is kind of the play here. But they're also trying to poke fun at it. They end up mentioning the wedding or, the marriage and the whole Spider-Man type deal. But what I did get a little chuckle. It does look like at points Lex turns into Brian Michael Bendis as he's getting the identity back. And that was kind of funny, but still, that is a thing that most people wanted. So no matter how they do it, I'm sure that people are just like, okay, I'm glad that it's back. It just has a little bit of things that I don't know. It feels a little sus overall, but we get the identity.
Very sus. They don't explain nothing.
No,
how come Lois Lane isn't having a stroke? Oh, because Martian Manhunter put a force field on her?
Yeah. There's the force field, and here's the deal.
Why didn't he put a force field on everybody?
Why didn't they do all this? Like Martian Manhunter actually has put this little in-planet deal so all of the heroes can't be mind controlled. That doesn't make sense, and that is a big thing that could cause problems down the lane here, especially with the idea. It gets us almost like an identity crisis. Like, what if you didn't want that? What if you're like, what are you doing, Martian Manhunter? But they tried to fudge it in, and they used that whole Kent farm with the foot. It's kind of forced, but I'm glad the identity is there, and we have.
As am I. They never got away with it. It was stupid the first time they did it, like back in the 90s, and it was even dumber when they let Bendis do it again.
Yeah. It's so funny that they just keep repeating that mistake, thinking that's what's going to make Superman interesting instead of just writing good Superman stories. And again, going back to that, like you said, I think this feels like more of a bullet point deal of, okay, we have to do this, and this. And overall, I didn't hate the issue, but I didn't feel like I got a real good grip of what was going to come forward from all three of these writers that are going to be going.
You just know who the villains are to the end, because Superman from Williamson is going to feature Lex Luthor, which we'll talk about here in a second. The John Kent Superman book is going to be somebody out there killing the variants of Superman across the multiverse. And then the Philip Kennedy Johnson action comic story is going to be Metallo. But I already knew that. I didn't need the little pages at the end to tell me that.
Yeah, we kind of already knew that. The only interesting thing that some people might like is the idea that it seems to be Ultraman that will be killing the people in the multiverse. That's what gets John, face to face with the guy who kidnapped them and stole those years. That's interesting enough, but guess what? We don't really know that here, and that would be something that might be, shown so people could get excited.
Might have made 1050 seem a little bit more cool if we saw that Ultraman and maybe John being like, That's the guy.
Yeah, I see you now. I'm coming for you. That's what I would have been excited for. And again,
maybe Clark having to hold him back, be like,
that would be
you
great
can't
too.
kill him right now.
Yeah.
We have to find a better time. It's too dangerous right here. I know that you need your revenge, but we've got something else going on, kind of
And
thing.
then then John says, "Well, Dad, you didn't hear I don't punch people, so I'll be fine.
I'm not going to punch it."
Yeah, I hope that what we get is that punching deal that gets left on Earth. When we head into the multiverse, he's going to kick some butt. I need him to really wreck house if he goes against Ultraman, but we'll see. We'll see how that is.
So a large portion of this comic book is absolutely dedicated to reestablishing the secret identity of Superman, Clark Kent, and as well as his son, John Kent. The other big thing that it really is trying to accomplish more than anything here is establishing the new, I guess, status quo between Superman and Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor obviously is his arch enemy here, and now Lex Luthor wants to team up with Superman, and that's his motivation by bringing the secret identity back. If you give your secret identity to the world, but you wouldn't give it to me, now I'm jealous because I'm in love with you. And if they can have you and I can't, it's not going to go that way. So I'm going to take away their ability to remember who you are, and you could only work with me now, and I made you a Superman suit. And it's like Lex Luthor has been getting tooled by Superman for decades upon decades now. It just kind of felt stupid and repetitive on something they only did like 5 years ago.
Yeah, I actually laughed. I thought because when he does say, "Hey, I'll let that wedding go, the marriage go, whatever," I actually thought the way he was acting like this, I'm fully shocked that at one point he didn't leave the room during the speech of his and then come back with a wedding dress, almost like a Bugs Bunny. Yoo-hoo! And then he's like, "Here I am, Clark." But it ends up being this weird Lex deal where he was jealous as a kid. You're going to reestablish and fully put down the idea that they grew up together in Smallville. That gets shuffled around a lot, but that was how they did it in Doomsday Clock as well. So that's the classic. I like that. But you end up where I was a loner. You had a secret. You didn't tell me. You told everybody. And I kind of, that's a little odd, Lex. You're going a little too far. I don't mind the whole identity deal and what he's doing. But when you get back to that point where he wants to team up with Superman, you said it. We keep doing things in this issue that it's been there, done that. We had that in Rebirth. He was Super Lex in Rebirth. He had a suit. He was going out there. He was with the whole super family trying to, be a gooder guy. Not real good guy, but he was doing some such things. But still, that's kind of what he did there. Then you end up even going with the John stuff in the multiverse. We had a story near Superman Reborn that was with the villain prophecy that was very much like that. It just feels like a lot of this is, well, you're fixing stuff you should have never changed, and you're redoing stuff that these things usually don't work. So it's a weird play. It was a weird play.
I don't like them trying to establish that the relationship in Lex Luthor's real issues with Superman are more like what is now the Joker-Batman relationship,
yeah,
where really he's secretly in love with him. I liked it when Lex Luthor thinks that he's better than everyone, and if you're going to like Superman more than you like me, I'm going to hurt everybody because I'm the one that everyone should be praising right now. You should be fawning over me, not Superman.
Exactly.
This is unfair, and I need to take this guy down. If that doesn't work, I'll take everyone else with me.
And with that, too, you have to go with the idea. The favorite thing of Lex that I have is that gray area where he thinks he's right. He ends up where he's against Superman because Superman's a stinking alien. We don't know anything about him. He's going to cause this trouble. Why don't you like me? I'm human, all that. This takes that kind of away, right?
Superman was like, you could do all these things if you put your mind to it. Why are you always trying to fight me? And he's like, I could cure cancer if I wanted to. My sister's dying of cancer. The reason I won't do it is because of you, Superman. Until you're gone, I won't do any of that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll prove it to you. He cures his sister's cancer and then gives it back to her just to show that he can do it.
That's Lex. I mean, that is pure evil. And that's what I like. And the idea where if you have this Lex, like, again, yeah, it's xenophobic and all that, but that's what he is. I mean, and this is a god amongst men who you would have a guy like Lex say, who's controlling this guy? He can end up destroying the world, and he is fighting back with that evil intent, too, to make himself look good. This just goes down to being jealous since you were a kid, and it does lessen it. I mean, it really does make Lex look like a little chump here who's just like, oh, man, I wanted to be your friend in high school, but you were so popular and I wasn't, and now I'm going to get you back. It's a very odd play.
Yeah, I wish they hadn't fully changed that. There's just some issues with that. The other big problem, outside the one big one we're going to mention here, a problem that they establish here is that somehow when Clark Kent went to World, now that he's back, he's more powerful. He was already powerful enough. This is what Superman Clark Kent says to Lex Luthor. Concepts like weight, distance, temperature, and even space-time have largely lost meaning to me. In moments, I can cross distances that cease to be distance. Because he's so powerful now, he transports him across the galaxy and he returns in a blink of an eye. He was already powerful enough, if not too powerful.
And that's the thing. If anybody says the problems with Superman is that he's too overpowered, now I guess with the Genesis fragment deal in the War World story, now he's even more. And I just want to have it where Lois says, hey, can you get me a pound of hamburger? And he's like, listen, I don't know anything about weight anymore. I can't help you, Lois. It's silly. And it's there to show you in a way like I don't get it because he's there and he's facing off against Lex, who pretty much seems to be Buzz Lightyear now in that crazy power suit that looks awful.
He already beats Lex Luthor. It's not a challenge for him.
Exactly. And that's where, if this was the case, maybe you could have done this stuff when it really needed to happen and whatnot. But we're done Dark Crisis. We come back here and then all of a sudden he's overpowered to face off against
If anything,
Lex.
they should have left a shard of like kryptonite in his testicle or something to depower him just a little bit.
Yeah, there's something. I mean, here's the thing. If this is the case, they're going to end up, this is another one of those changes that I guess at the 2000th issue, we'll have to pull that back. I mean, when are you going to stop this stuff where you go too far? Superman didn't need to be overpowered. He was already overpowered, like you said. And then in a weird play in this too, Lex gets arrested again, like a chump, and I didn't get it. I don't get the play here, even though that might be his plan or something like that. But he wants to team up with Superman. He's jealous. He's there. He's in jail. There we go. And there's Lex. But again, I love Lex Luthor. I think he's great. I don't like fully this kind of concept of how it's going there. I like the Lex where Superman knows that he's a threat in the Lex way. This kind of takes it away from him.
Yeah, so this is supposed to be setting the groundwork for Superman in 2023. Superman is being reinvigorated. They're putting a lot more focus on him. He's getting multiple series now. And I'll be honest, after reading this, I'm less excited than I was going in. I was already excited about the Philip Kennedy Johnson Metallo stuff. And it's kind of like whatever. But now that I'm seeing this Lex Luthor changes and stuff, I'm less interested in Superman #1 from Josh Williamson. And I was never interested in the John Kent, Tom Taylor stuff because it sucks.
Yeah, and I don't know. Again, I'm kind of even keel. I'm not disappointed. I'm not excited, but that's the thing. I came in wanting to be excited. Me and you, we end up reading a ton of comics. We talk about them all the time. We want these things to be cool and exciting because you get to talk about something cool and exciting. So when I went into this, I was really at the point, and I heard some people talking too, thinking this was going to be this wow moment. This was going to be like the Rebirth special, the Rebirth #1, where I was like, oh my God, I can't wait for these books. Yeah, I'm still at the same deal. I want to read the Philip Kennedy Johnson stuff. Joshua Williamson, we'll see. And we'll see with the John, but it didn't get me fired up at all.
The one thing that I thought was the worst thing about this comic book, and it's not even close, and I didn't love everything about the stories and whatnot and the changes that they did make, but the one thing that's awful is the inconsistent art. We got Mike Perkins, we've got Nick Dragotta, and we got Clayton Henry here. The Clayton Henry art stands out as not being good next to those two artists. Yeah. The Mike Perkins art stands out as not really fitting the character or the scenes that he was illustrating, in my opinion. The Nick Dragotta stuff kind of looks good, but it gets all washed out with these other artists, and it just looks like shit.
Yeah, it does. And you have this big deal, and you really have grabbed a bunch of artists that, in books that suit their style are good. They're not that great here. The gritty style of Perkins, it's cool, but it doesn't fit a book where I come into this wanting to be excited and have hope and, all that. It kind of dims that down. And the Clayton Henry stuff, you have to watch out because he draws skinny characters with real skinny faces, and that does not fit Superman. Superman should be this presence. Superman should be this guy, and he's just this skinny looking guy, and everything felt
He was
off.
embarrassing in comparison, especially the Nick Dragotta art that it was right next to that had some similarities as far as coloring.
Yeah, yep, yeah. And I do like the Nick Dragotta stuff. Like you
I
said,
thought it
it
was
just
good.
ended up where it kind of gets lost in the shuffle. It really does, because you're there, and the styles also in this. I know they're trying to do this to show, hey, we're gonna have different, but they're so drastic in the deal that it is one of those things that it makes you like, holy crap, like what's going on here? And it really does. Unfortunately for
There's no
Clayton
rhyme or
Henry.
reason by the
Yeah,
art changes either. It's not like,
no,
oh, that's clearly the
exactly.
Philip Kennedy Johnson story that Mike Perkins is doing. That's clearly the Josh Williamson stuff that Nick Dragotta is doing, and that's clearly the John Kent Superman stuff that Tom Taylor's writing.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel like that at all. It just happens.
Yeah, and that's another point of this. When I went in, I really wanted to have a definitive idea. Like, you go into this, and I wanted to say, okay, these 10 pages, those were Tom Taylor. These 10, that's Joshua Williamson. Oh, that story's cool. That's neat. It kind of, like the art, like you say, kind of gets all mixed together. It kind of gets all in this goulash going on. And at the end, I'm like, I don't really know what's going on here. I don't know which book I'm excited for or not, because it just ends up at the end, almost like the 2-minute warning hits, and you're like, oh crap, here's Val Sod. Hey, that's what's going to go on there. Here's, John Corbin, Metallo. All right, let's go. And it just felt like a missed opportunity. It actually, overall, for something that should be big, it felt like it was thrown together almost at the last second. It really did.
So those are pretty much my takes. Do you have anything else to add here, Jim, about Action Comics 1050, a milestone that does not feel like a milestone, that feels like a zero issue that probably should have been given away for free?
My last thoughts are possibly the idea. I'm not going to judge this issue and say I'm not going to read the books coming up. I already had an idea which ones I was more excited for or whatnot. I will give those an opportunity. And just to throw it out there, Philip Kennedy Johnson's going to be going on the Action Comics book. Obviously, that's also going to have a Dan Jurgens story. That's a young John story. And a Leah Williams story, Power Girl. So there is more to it as well, that I was actually upset that we didn't see a little of that as well. This seemed more like you said. It's just kind of their bullet points thrown together. Let's get going. It felt like a zero issue or even a free comic book day issue.
The good news is that this was never going to be worse than last year's worst Superman comic book, Tom King's Dark Crisis Worlds Without a Justice League Superman, supposedly the greatest world that Superman could ever imagine growing up with his son. This thing was absolute trash. It felt like a middle finger to Superman fans everywhere. Definitely check this one out if you haven't seen this video. There's also a link in the video description.